Welcome back my YouTube channel. Let's learn English with Khushi. So today we are going to read British poetry, and in previous video I have done my first poems written by Andrew Marvell, and this is the second poem of Andrew Marvell. So this poem name is The Garden. First and foremost I have to talk about the author, and the author is Andrew Marvell. This poem is written 1621 to 1678 and it is also metaphysical poet, politicians and satirist also. He was a friend and I think he was a friend to John Milton and is known for his intellectual poetry filled with the imaginary and philosophical reflections. Now let's understand this poem line by lines. um, Actually it is all about love, nature love. Poem The Garden is a poem that praises solitude and nature over worldly or ambitions, and romantic poem. In first stanza, it is written, "How vainly men themselves amaze to win the palm, the oak or vase," which means people tire themselves trying to win rewards like a victory, honor. And second line, "And their unceased labor cease crowns from some singles harp or tree," which means after working endlessly, they are rewarded with a simple wreath made from plants whose short and narrow verged said, does prudently their toils upbraid, which means the small seeds of this victory seems to mock their hard effort, while all flowers and all trees do close to weave the garlands of repose, which means in contrast the garden offers peaceful and rest and natural beauty freshly. Now second stanza. Now second stanza. Fair quiet have I found thee here, and innocence thy sister dear. The poet finds peace and purity in the garden. Next, mistaken long I sought you then in busy companions of men. Sought means searching, seeking. Like if something is stolen, then after what will you do? Finding that stuff, right? That is the meaning of shout. Here it means he once searched for happiness in society but failed. Your scared plants, if here below, only among the plants will grow. True peace grows only among nature. Society is all about all but rude to this delicious solitude. Means society feels rough compared to the sweetness of solitude. Now third stanza. No white nor red was ever seen, so amorous as this lovely green. The green of nature is more beautiful than a lover's red and white complexions. Found lovers cruel as their flame, which means cut in these trees their mysteries name. Lovers carve name into trees, harming nature. Little alas they know or had how far this beauty hers exceeds. They don't realize that nature is more beautiful than their beloved. Third, fourth stanza. The poet describes fruits falling into his hands and vines crushing wine upon him. Nature provides everything effortlessly. It shows abundance and generosity of the garden. Now, five stanza. Meanwhile, the mind from pleasure less withdrawal into its happiness, which means the mind turns inward for deeper happiness. The mind that oceans where each kind does straits its own resembles find. The mind is vast like an ocean's. In solitude, imagination creates its own world. Now, sixth stanza. Now, sixth stanza. The poet imagines the soul as a bird sitting on branches, which means the soul rests peacefully in nature, suggests a spiritual harmony between soul and nature. Now, seventh stanza. Such was that happy and garden state, while a man there walked without a maid. Refers to Garden of Eden before Eve was created. After a place so pure and sweet, what other help could yet be meant? Which means Adam did not need to a partner in such a perfect places. In eighth stanza, the poet describes a chandelier covered with flowers. Time moves gently in the garden. Nature becomes a better measure of time, and then mechanical clocks. Let's understand the summary of this poem, The Garden, written by Andrew Marvell. The Garden is a lyrical poem in which Andrew Marvell praises nature and solitude, which means solec or maybe peaceful, over human society, love, and ambitions. The poem reflects the poet's belief that true peace and happiness are found in quite communal with the nature rather than in worldly pursuits. And first point is a criticism of human ambitions and love. At the beginning of the poem, the poet criticizes people who chase fame, power, romantic love. He says that humans unnecessarily exhausted themselves by running after honor, wealth, relationships. Accordingly to the poet, such pursuits being restless instead of satisfactions. Praise of solitudes and nature. Marvel contrasts human society with the calm and purity of a garden. In the garden, he finds peace, silence, and freedom from social pressure. The nature environment refreshes his mind and soul. He feels that nature offers a power, joy than human love, which often brings pain and confusion. Third, nature as a source of pleasure. The poet describes the beauty of fruit, trees, flowers set in the garden. These nature pleasures are innocent and self-sufficient, unlike human desires that depend on the others. The garden satisfies him without demanding anything in return. Fourth, the mind's journey in solitude. In solitude, the poet's mind's becoming free, imaginative. It rises above physical reality and finds happiness within itself. The garden allows his thoughts to wander peacefully, showing that true joy comes from inner harmony rather than external achievements. Comparison with the biblical Adam. Marvel refers to Adam in the Garden of Eden, suggesting that Adam enjoyed perfect happiness before Eve was created. This implies that solitude is more fulfilling, the companionship, and that human interference disturb natural peace, time, and spiritual peace. The poem ends with an image of time moving gently and rhythmically in the garden. Nature follows a calm nature order. Unlike human life, which is rushed and chaotic, the garden becomes a symbol of spiritual balance and internal peace. If I talk about the overall the meaning of this poem, the garden celebrates solitude, nature, and inner peace. Marvel suggests that withdrawing from society and human desires leads to a deeper understanding of life is a more lasting happiness. The poem presents nature as a place where the soul can rest and renew itself. Well, this is the all about this poems. It is really interesting poem and also thought provoking poems. And if I talk about the conclusion of this poem, so in the garden, Andrew Marvell presents the nature as a place of peace, spiritual growth, and true happiness. He criticizing ambitions, romantic love, and social life, suggesting that solitude in nature offers deeper joy than worldly success. So yeah, and maybe there is important cautions in this book can be comes in paper exams. Was I think this is the only one. Let's read it. The garden critical appreciations. Mm, the garden is a richly symbolic poem. Marvel mostly alludes to the garden of idea. This Eden, the poem comments with establishing that of all the possible garden. It is dealing with that of retirement, with the garden of contemplative man whose sun actions mean vainly run after palm is for victors, oak for rulers, and bice is for poets. But retired life is a quantitatively supreme. If you praises action in terms of plants, you get single plants, whereas retirement offers you the solace of not one but all planets. The first stanza then is a witty dispraises of active life, though it has nothing that can differentiate it with other garden poverty. This poem moves around the superiorities of a contemplative life over a life of the action. The poet asserts that the garden is a fit place for contemplations in the green sets of a tree in quiet and tranquil atmosphere. Garden is a place where one can experience the pleasure of the mind and soul as well as the pleasures of the senses. He is not agreeable to those people who go crazy for the worldly honors, award and prizes, but all these worldly honors and distinctions serve no useful purpose as compared to the pleasure of the contemplations in a peaceful, lonely place as a garden. The poet shows little appreciation for women here. We find ironically comment about the people who run after female beauty, yet they never realize that the greenery of the garden is more beautiful and appealing to them than the red lip and wild complexions of a woman. In his opinion, lovers of women should become lover of nature. They will experience not only mental and spiritual pleasure but sensual pleasure as well. He makes ironically comments on the foolish lovers who carve the name of their beloved ones on the leaf or love the bark of trees. In this way, they prove themselves to be cunning. In fact, he observes Adam, but much better and happier before meeting Eve in the gardens of Adam. Adam was perfectly happy when he was all alone in the company of a companion of beautiful, spiritual, invigorating nature. But this state of perfect happiness was disrupted the moment Eve came in the life of Adam was responsible for his downfall, worries, and his willful act of misdeeds. Mm, as were Marvel's himself, he is perfectly satisfied at the time when he feels the closeness of fruitful trees. This poem is full of sensuous imagery. Some of the pictures in this poem have a richly sensuous quality. Apollo and Pan giving hot pursuits to earthy because are such pictures and images. Though the poet twists the whole incident's disapproval, the journal believed that the gods were prompted by their lust. Similarities we find sensuous pictures one after another. When the poet describes the fruit in stanza, our mouth begins to water when we find how ripe a pear drop above the poet's head, and the luscious, which means nice, very delicious, luster grapes crashing their wine upon his mouth, and how the nectarines and pieces come into his hands their own accord without any effort on the part of the poet. The poet stumbles on million and is ensnared by flowers and plants when he falls on the grasses. This poem mainly deals with contrast and reconciles conscious and unconscious distinctions is never made explicit. Marvel's thoughts implied by his metaphors. The poem combines the idea of the conscious mind, including everything, because understanding it, and the unconscious animal nature, including everything, being in harmony with it. The point is not that these two are essentially different, but they should not be so either. There are important cautions which should comes in your examinations. There's so many cautions, I guess. Oh, discuss the charm of Marvel. Write critical accounts of Andrew Marvell imaginary. Okay, Andrew Marvell was a metaphysical poet considered Marvell poems treat biographer and critic alike for its evident that the conflicty demands of self and the world, which is one guise or another inform. Many of his celebrated poems need to be seen not only in relations to his own enigmatic personality, but also in the context of that a historian has called central of revolutions. Now should we see the progress of Andrew Marvell as a poet, it is due to the quality of his poetry as a whole, where all the charm lies. The quality of Andrew Marvell's verification is one of the reasons that brought him to the notice of the literary world. It is the terseness of his style which impresses every reader at the first instance. So Marvel poetry is remarkable uh, for the senseless or terseness of its style. The other remarkable quality of Marvel's poetry is its sensuous. The garden shows this quality fairly well. Stumbling on melon as I pass, enshrined with flowers, I fallen grass. In fact, he is the lucrative of grass, and so in this poem we feel greenery. The transcriptions of the whole scenes makes an irresistible appeal to our sense of um, taste, smell, and sight. Next quality of Marvel's poetry is his wit and humor. The nymph complaining for the death of her fawn is one such poem which is hyperbolic in fancy. Though hyperbole fits the loneliness of pastoral world, there is no much for his nature poetry in his sensuous love of gardens. Next to the garden, the other remarkable poem about nature is Bermuda Sands, which combines delicacy and depth of feeling coupled with the attractions of sweet songs. His love poems are full of passion. His poem to his quiet mysteries has um, undoubtedly the strength and passions of John Donne without his obscurities and or bad taste, and run easily and harmoniously. These lines are the master pieces of metaphysical poetry in his genuine and genre in the history of the feeling for nature. His place is considerable, his poetry is charming, and it appeals every heart. In his poem The Garden, he throws himself into very soul of the garden. Lyrical notes mark the Elizabethan poetry, and its reaction is the metaphysical poetry. It was profuse with beauty and rich in melody without putting any It's a really big one. A strain or conscious effort on the part of the poet. So the young poets of the 17th century felt tired of it and a reaction set in. Turner set the trend of metaphysical poets. They came forward and substitutes compressions for the diffusiveness they introduced in the poetry subtitle and do an unexpected comparison in the place of a straightforward imaginary and similes from descriptions to analyze was their technique. So they turned to the soul and to religious pity, and thus Turner substitutes roughness of meter and the place of idealistic love poem became real and crazy poems. Marvel presents the lyric intensity of the Elizabethan. The other Elizabethan characteristic is the sensuous kind of the imaginary that we find in the poem Marvel in a planting in Marvel poetic distance. Elizabethan influence is a clearly 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 discernible. Moreover, some of the conceits used by Marvel remind us the of the Elizabethan variety being simple and straightforward. Sometimes we sometimes we are amazed to see the nobility and originality of concept used by Marvel. His lyrics are comparatively high, argumentative, and are the example of passionate thinking. In his expressions and style, he shows treasoniness and comparisons. His themes are generally related to the human things in the world. The Garden shows another mingle of Elizabethan and metaphysical poets. Here we find richness of sensuous imaginary, which is striking. Elizabethan's the compilations of the delicious fruits has a rich sensuous appeal. Another striking example of sensuous imaginary, which is reminiscent of Elizabethan poetry, is to be found in the poem Bermuda. Here we find several lines explain the sweet fruits of the island. He is ahead of Elizabethan. His treatment of nature arouses not only sensuous but also a spiritually experience in the reader. As a matter of fact, poet before Marvel expects Shakespeare had expressed the kind of accelerated sentiments in relations to nature we find in Marvel's poetry. The Garlands contains a couple of stanzas which provide a sensuous peace to the reader by their descriptions of fruits and flowers. Marvel was a great lover of nature. It proves in the poem like upon Appleton houses upon the hill and grow at Billingbroad, the garden on a drop of the dew, Bermuda, the picture of little Tissy and the nymph companion for that of her fawn. Then there are the four more poems which follow the traditions of pastoral poet. All these poems shows Marvel's minutes and loving observation of the scenery of nature. Amidst nature, he is lost and finds the appeal of nature overwhelming and irresistible, and he surrenders to her charm with his will and joy. In his nature poem, much of his imaginations of nature is richly sensuous, and he anticipates kids in this respect. He also finds spiritual significance in natural scenes and phenomena. He finds himself in contemplative mood in the companion of nature and then gets lost in meditation. Nature indeed casts a spell on him. It is quite relevant to mention here that is the bulk of his nature poetry was written between his 29th and his 31st years when he was living in country seclusions in non-Appleton. So, in the poetry of Marvel, the readers feel the sense of natural spirit in the poem On the Drop of Dew. A natural phenomena suggests a spiritual significance, and it lends a new significance to a dew drop. The poet first invests this tiny drop of water with life and a soul, and then goes on to describe the human soul which is anxious to go back to the original place. Marvel imaginary presents a real picture in a vivid and concrete shape. It is no longer vague or misty and confusing. Whatever the image the poet has in his mind to draw, he describes it in full detail, and there is no ambiguity about it. He is not in the habit of throwing vague hints as some metaphysical poets may be busy in. Okay, now second questions. Write a critical essay on Marvel's treatment of love as a reflect in his poem. Critically examine love theme in Marvel's poetry. Love is an initially part of Marvel lyrics poetry, with the exceptions of a few love poems like To His Coy Mysteries, The Fair Singer, and The Unfortunate Lover. The remaining poems are not given much importance by the critics. There are poems in which the theme of love occurs as a subsidiary a subject, such as upon Appleton's house and the new companion. In fact, To His Coy Mysteries is acknowledged as a masterpiece of Marvel. One critic who has an adverse opinion about his other love poem agreed that this is a unique love poem, and that for Sri Power it ranks higher than anything ever written by him. It is not true to say the Marvel Amentrary verses is called in The Fair Singer. The lover says that both beauties of his mysteries, the beauty of eyes and the beauty of her voice, have joined themselves in fatal harmony to bring about his death. She also binds his ears by her eyes and captivates his mind by her sweet voice. He next tells us how his soul has got entangled in the curried terminals of her hair. Similarly, in the poem To His Coy Mysteries, the passions are run equally high. In the first two stanzas, the lover is a bit sarcastic in his remarks, though he talks of his love and devotions in hyperbolic way. But at the end, he becomes truly ardent and fervent in his passions. Here, he feels so much overwhelmed and overpowered by his passion that he suggests to his beloved to become one with him, and they should roll all their strength and all their sweetness into one ball, and should tear their pleasure with rough stripes. Though the iron gate of life's theme is the intensity in the poem, the unfortunate love when passions are high and intense, almost red hot. The lover under this circumstances feels helpless and dejected as he is beat by beat by all the wings uh, utterly of cubed, and like a Ajax find himself between the flames and the waves. He is soon as one dressed in his own blood, or which constituted his real tragedy, and brings him to a disastrous end. There is one more poem that presents the specialist of intellect and its super supersedes all others in young love. This love has an unconventional themes conceived of passions for a little girl, 30 or 14. The lover wants that girl should make up her mind quickly as fate may intervene meanwhile, and their whole attempt is a thwart. He does not want to give her more time, though he is a minor girl of 30 or 40. To his coy mysteries is much appreciated, and it has the intensity of passions of John Donne without his obscurity and bad taste. The lines of the poem runs easily, smoothly, and harmoniously. These lines are the masterpieces of metaphysical poetry in that genre. Also shows a return to an Epicormus themes gather you roots while you may, but it is repeated with new intensities, vigor. These lines come from a heart which is truly deep and passionate. Now let us spot us while we may, and now like amorous words of prey, rather at once our time devour, and then sluggish and in his slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball and tear our pleasure with a rough strife through the iron gate of life. And thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run. Attempt a critical appreciations of to his square mysteries. Marble is the best known through this poem. It is a love poem in which lover appeals to his beloved to relax her rigid attitude of puritical reluctance to grant him sexual favor. The lover here puts up his case vehemently with the equally solid argument. The lover builds up really a strong case in his favor and supports it with argument that no sensible woman can reject it. The beginning of the poem strikes with these keynotes, if only they are not subject to the inexorable laws of space and time, they could play out the fantasy of a love which slowly expanded over the face of the earth like an empire, and which lasts right through human history from Noah flood to the second coming of chariots harlots by the conversations of the Jews. Such a fantasy are among the devices how human heart has invented to cope imaginatively with the fact of time and morality. This poem presents a metaphysical conceit in a pictorial way. The lover is talking of his love in a very fantastic and unrealistic way. Had we enough time and space at our disposal, we would have done this. That is the really very funny.